Today we're in Monterey, California, meeting up with Huntington Witherill, who trained with Ansel Adams. He's world-renowned for his landscape photography, but he's quite diverse. As he put it, I'm a fairly eclectic photographer, very difficult to categorize, and I like it that way. Join us as we explore with him his secrets for outstanding composition that you can put right into use. Huntington, okay. So let's start by talking about visualization. And what does it mean to you?
Well, to me, visualization means very much what Edward Weston described as the strongest way of seeing.
Right.
Whenever you're looking at a scene that you want to photograph, he considered it to be, or he titled it, the flame of recognition. And basically, it was a matter of you looking at a scene and seeing something about the scene that attracts you to photograph it.
Okay.
And what I try to do with visualization and what it actually means to me is using my imagination to take what is already out in the world that we are photographing and via the camera and all the other tools that go along with it, try to arrange the scene in such a way that it's going to produce an interesting and compelling result.
The strongest way of seeing it.
The strongest way of seeing. Whenever you approach any subject matter, you know, there are obviously infinite number of viewpoints that you can take.
Yeah.
Well, finding that best viewpoint is often the key to visualization.
So I think we're going to delve into this some more for sure.
Okay.
Because my first question would be, okay, how do you find the strongest way of seeing? And I think as we go through this, maybe we'll get that question answered.
Possibly we could. Why don't we start
Yeah.
right here with this photograph. This is a photograph of, for lack of a better way to describe it, cracked mud and a little puddle of water.
That's what it is.
Now, I'm looking nearly straight down on this photograph, so...
So you were looking down like this?
Exactly.
Okay, there's a puddle.
And what attracted me to this in the first place was not the fact that it was mud and a puddle, but that when I looked down at it with the reflection of the sky, I thought to myself, this is a big arch.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm looking through a tunnel. And to me, that is what attracted me to take this picture. So that's what I mean by visualization, is not only finding the best point of view, but also trying to find something that makes the scene become something other than what it actually is.
Right.
Minor White described it as photographing things for what they are and for what else they are. And that's something that's always been very important to me in my photography.
So you're really telling a story and almost using a simile for something else. Then.
You're telling a story, and it's almost as if the subject matter that you're photographing is really a vehicle to view whatever it is in a different way.
A metaphor almost.
Yeah. Now, not all photographs are like that, but the ones that I find that are most successful for me, that's...
Okay.
I found that you look at them, they're often abstract, and you see something in them that, you know, maybe is totally unlike what it actually was.
Sure. Interesting.
So that interests me.
Okay. Let's take a look at this one as an example.
Yeah.
Tell me the story, what you first
Well, the
of all-
story behind this is a rest stop along Interstate 80. It's just outside of Wendover, Utah.
One of those funky rest stops that we all
Just
try
a funky
to avoid.
rest stop.
Okay.
It's a beautiful, unusually shaped building that is basically a veranda with a very long roof.
Yeah.
That covers a parking area. If you pulled into this place to park, you would pull right up to this wall.
Wow. Okay.
And if you looked over this wall, which is really in reality maybe 4.5 feet tall, on the other side of it are a couple of picnic tables that are under the shade of this long roof that extends down.
Okay.
And about a quarter to a half mile out into the desert are the railroad tracks. And so
there's a bunch of flat cars.
there's a bunch of box cars out there. And the idea with this for me is the placement of the camera is the key.
Yeah.
Because if you were a quarter of an inch higher or a quarter of an inch lower, you'd lose the fact that this These
Right.
railroad cars look like they're sitting on top of that wall.
Exactly.
So,
And
that's kind of the essence of it, is the placement of it. So the composition is really important in this particular photograph. And really what I liked about it was not only this idea of this train moving along this wall, you know, the narrow wall,
Yeah.
which makes it look kind of like a model train in a
Yeah.
way. And then the shapes of the, you know, the building and how it forms with the use of a fairly wide angle lens.
So this was your strongest way of seeing, because you're right.
Hopefully.
If you'd been a little lower, you would have missed.
Yeah.
Or a little higher, they would have been sort of floating.
Yeah, and this little jog in the roof there, I think is important to give a sense of asymmetry to the image as well. So,
Can you tell me about this photograph?
this is taken out in the Owens Valley. It's a photograph of the Eastern Sierra in storm clouds. One of the things that I like about this image, and I think that it's a result of the clouds forming the base of the image itself, it looks almost like an aerial view.
It does.
I'm standing on Highway 395 looking up at the mountains. Again, the light is, you know, a very important part of this image, and there's not too much manipulation in terms of the contrast range and that sort of thing in this particular image.
Now, clouds form an interesting part of photography because, you know, if this were shot with a clear sky, it'd be pretty boring.
Yes.
So you've probably got a little feel for, okay, how are you going to find those clouds? What's your secret there as far as?
I wish I had a secret.
Do you just
to
wait
tell.
until you see them and then go
Well,
shoot?
I do look at satellite maps
Okay.
when I'm traveling, and if I see a storm
You
coming
see
in the
the-
northwest, I'm not afraid to travel 300 miles to, you know, head into it.
Did you guys hear that? It isn't just by accident that he's getting these
Yeah.
clouds. Okay.
Well, I mean, this is a fortuitous circumstance.
Sure.
And you know, landscape photography in particular, it almost matters just as much what's going on in the sky as what's going on in the
Completely.
land. Because as you say, you know, a bright blue sky, which is great like today, it's great to be out there, but it's not the best for
not exciting.
photography.
Yeah.
So when you get clouds in the sky, and particularly when you get clouds kind of hanging around close to the ground, that's a real opportunity.
Absolutely.
So
Long exposures. So can you show me an example of?
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, we have an excellent one over here.
Okay, great.
This particular photograph was taken using a neutral density filter. This is about a 30-second exposure. And this is something I've worked with more often than I used to, and work with it quite a bit now, is the neutral density filters and using long exposures.
Now, why? Okay, just from that point, why
Yeah.
did you put an ND filter on there?
Well, if I had taken this, even at stop down all the way down to f/22, which is as far as the camera I have with the particular lens that I was using would go, I'd end up with about a 1-second exposure.
Gotcha.
And these little flotsam bubbles that are floating around in here, they'd have moved maybe, you know, a couple of inches.
I gotcha.
By going for 30 seconds, you allow them
You
to
get the
really move
whole
around, and you get all this motion.
Okay.
So the only way to gain more time is with a neutral density filters.
Let's talk about this Edward Weston, strongest way of seeing. Tell me why
Mm-hmm.
that's the strongest way of seeing for you.
Well, it's going to be hard for me to argue that that was the strongest way of seeing, because there are always other ways to see.
Of course.
I felt that this worked for me because of the fortuitous way in which all the flotsam
The swirls.
moved around.
Yeah.
You really don't have control over that. You kind of get a sense about where those things are moving, but you don't really know.
Yeah.
I did know that this particular fall, you can see where it starts to fade out on the edge there.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to make sure that I kept that contained within the frame. This thing, you know, for all I know, could have been way over here.
Right.
So it was the strongest good guess.
Thank you guys for joining us, and as always, we love it when you guys like us, share, and be sure to subscribe and support us on Patreon, and to go to Huntington's website, which is,
HuntingtonWitherill.com. And
there it is right there.
it's not an easy one to spell, but most any way you spell it, you'll get there. So.
Okay, thanks again. We'll see you guys soon.